everybody. Welcome to episode number 2 of vRealize This Live. My name is Matt Bradford. Joining me is Julie Roman. Julie, how are you?
Oh, pretty good.
Good. Thanks for jumping on.
Technical difficulties. Work through that using the old laptop camera.
Yep. Get you in here just in the nick of time. So today's topic is the most important thing that everyone always seems to forget about cloud migrations. Really, I'm sure you saw John Diaz's demo here where we were looking at vRealize operations and how we can, resize everything, right-size everything before we migrate, do some what-if planning. So I think we've kind of checked all the boxes, right? Like, I'll put my key in the control panel, you can put yours in the control panel, and we'll just hit migrate.
But make sure to clean it up first, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, actually, let's see. Martijn Smit is on. Let's bring him in. He's shaking his head that what we're saying is not quite right. I think we're missing Martijn.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. It's going to give you very, very ugly nightmares and things.
I don't like that answer.
Yeah, but we're using static IPs. It's all fine.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, you saw it maybe in the description, but the thing that everybody always forgets is the network.
Oh, okay. All right. That's it. So we can't just move our workloads over to the cloud and it's just going to magically work. So we're saying like we need to move the plumbing over too.
Yeah, a little bit. You need to make sure that the plumbing has the same connectors, that you have the proper flow, that you have the proper connections between your new environment and your old environment. You just have to make sure that stuff works and it's not going to get overloaded. Like everybody hates bad plumbing, right?
Exactly. Only when it doesn't work. So I mean, you're going to show us today about vRealize Network Insight and dive into what are we going to take a look at today?
Everything you want to do, but I'm going to keep it a little bit simple because we only got like 25 minutes. But We're going to be looking at like what do you need to look at when you are doing migrations? Like what networking and security aspects do you need to cover? So what questions do you need to ask yourself? Then I'm going to show you a little bit on how vRealize Network Insight presents that data that you can then use for that migration planning and design. I've also got some cool demos around the data operations while the migration is actually happening. So it's not that you just press a button and then the migration goes smoothly. I mean, you might hope that it would go that way, but you do need to keep an eye out on how the network is behaving when you are doing these migrations, because they can be pretty demanding of the network and causing all kinds of issues if you don't pay attention on what it does.
Got it. Okay. Well, let's take a look. Let's dive right into vRealize Network Insight here. I assume you've got it open. We can bring it up.
Yeah, if this is going to work, it's always
it's going to work.
Let me actually zoom in a little bit. 120, 110 is fine. There we go. So a couple things. I mean, vRealize Network Insight, if you are new to it, let me just paint you a real small picture. I'm not going to go into it too deep. But what vRealize does is it collects all the networking and security data that's happening on the physical network, on the virtual network, on the cloud network, but also on the SD-WAN network, and then correlates that all together. So you have one view of your entire network instead of just looking at point solutions for your networking components. So you can draw a map between your on-prem data center and your cloud instances, for example, if you want. Troubleshoot that, look at what kind of traffic is going between those VMs or those workloads, see how the traffic is actually behaving. So what is the max usage, what is the latency that goes over that network, so the end user experience. And it correlates that all together, and you have all these dashboards which will help you like discover your SD-WAN or the entire network in a network map. We're pretty heavily focused on applications here as well, because that's pretty much what it's all about, right? The applications, when someone calls you, it's not that, hey, my IP address is acting slow. No, my application is acting slow. So we've got this application construct baked in. Also something around microsegmentation or security planning, as I like to call it. Microsegmentation is a little bit older term, I should say. Because we don't always look at the micro segment these days anymore. We also go look at the macro segment, but that's about it.
So the difference being between micro and macro. Macro is really just at the individual application level.
Yeah, it could be actually whatever you want. I mean, micro is typically at the VM level, right? The smallest level that you can segment, or even the container these days, the container interface. But macro can be basically anything that you want, and based on your own security policy, you can choose a couple ways. You can do on a per application basis, so you can say, all right, I've got these applications, and I want to fend everything off from the outside going into that application. That application can then consist of a couple of VMs or other workloads, physical servers, all that, right? But you can also go further. Whether we like it or not, there are still a lot of customers that are doing zone segmentation. So they've got their VLANs, they've got their networks, they've got their physical firewalls, and they just want to secure the traffic going over that firewall or coming in and out of the DMZ, so the internet-facing zones, those type of things. So you can choose your own adventure, basically, because if I go into the microsegmentation planner, I could check, like, do I want to focus on applications? Do I want to focus on networks? Or do I want to focus on a entirely data center, for example?
Got it. So a lot of different options there that we can dive into. So let's take a look at the application first, I guess.
Yeah. So what I want to do is really quickly show you what an application is. So these applications are in the system, and we can use these. So, for example, if I open up this Hive training, I open up the application dashboard, where if my internet is working with me, then we will see a couple of things, such as a summary bar. We've got the traffic details, ingoing, outgoing. That's a nice number. 900 flows. This is live data, by the way. This is not like statically, and I want to show that 900, but this is we've got the countries that are using this application. So if we're looking at like an internet-facing application, you can determine which countries are actually accessing this one. And then the makeup. So this is an app that has 3 VMs, a couple of physical IP addresses, and then 0 Kubernetes services. But it could be a combination of both, of all of these 3, right? Actually, the most interesting part is this diagram. This is a live view of the application and how it looks inside the environment. So we've got a hybrid app here, a video server that's located on vCenter. I could zoom in and get the VM details if I'd like. I've got a Rotterdam branch right here with only physical IP addresses. So this is a branch with end users attached to it. Then I've got this storage tier right here, and this is located both on vCenter and on AWS natively. And just because I know that one of these VMs is on VMware Cloud on AWS, so yeah, it's located in the vCenter, but it's still hosted inside AWS. So this is like the topology of this application, and you can see how the traffic is flowing between these. If I keep the focus here, I can see that the storage app is, or the storage tier is talking to the video app and the internet, some shared physical services, and some other applications. And I can zoom in and see what those shared physical IP addresses actually are. The way that these are classified is like, are we using DNS or NTP or Active Directory on this from these workloads? Good morning. Another
Okay,
thing
so we're getting all this without any sort of prior knowledge of this application, right? Like we don't necessarily have to know that we've got all these different layers here. Network Insight's already drawn this out for us. That's really cool.
Yeah, because it listens to the network traffic and it just forms those applications based on that. I can go back into the application discovery, do application discovery based on, well, doing nothing. And that's the most fun way, of course. By flow-based application discovery, which basically just does or listens to the network flows and then distills the applications, then distills the tiers inside those applications based on the actual network traffic that's going through the network. So you don't have to do anything for this one. But there's also a couple of ways to discover based on metadata, such as tags or a naming convention, or you can pull it down from ServiceNow, the CMDB there.
Do you see people cleaning this up before they migrate then?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I know John was talking about you don't really want to migrate your mess, and this is where you can detect and visualize all the problems you have, right?
Yeah, so the application discovery is the first step. Then you get these application dashboards, and then you can go ahead and look at what other applications are talking to this app. In this case, you've got just one dependency, this top video application, and I can zoom in on that one to get its dashboard to see how it looks like. But in this case, you can see that this app, in this case, just the Detroit, Rotterdam, basically every single tier is talking to this top video app. So you have the dependency there. So you can look at, is that dependency even supposed to be there? Like it has someone maybe by mistake or sort of a workaround couple these two applications together, and then maybe you want to cut that dependency off. But also just look at the workloads that these tiers contain, right? In this case, if I focus on the VMs, if I zoom in, I get the actual per VM communication. We've got this Hive video server right here. We've got the storage server and another storage server. Basically, if VRealize detects that there are a lot more of these VMs inside these tiers and they might not be doing the same things, maybe it's just a random temporary VM or something that it has detected that it's a part of this app, you can clean that up before you actually do the migration.
Okay.
And it actually takes me to sort of a migration planning pin board, if you will. And pin boards are sort of like dashboards, and you can make them yourself. So anything with a pin, and whether that be a table or a search results or the topology, anything with a pin you can pin somewhere, and then make it a dashboard. So I put together this dashboard for a migration that we were doing. And before I go into this one, I should say that there are typically two ways that you approach a migration. It's on a per application manner or on a per network manner. So network could be a VLAN or just a layer 2 network. The reason why those two exist is because if you are migrating from one place to another and you want to keep your IPs, so you don't want to re-IP the VMs that you're moving, you need to stretch your network from on-prem to the destination where you're going. One, that's not always possible, but two, if it's possible, then layer 2 stretching is not. It doesn't win the networking beauty contest. Let's put it that way.
Get a lot of pushback in my day when we asked for stretch layer 2.
Right. Not going to happen, they say.
Yeah.
I've personally knocked out a couple of data centers by making a typo in a layer 2 extension, for example. So they're quite dangerous. Plus, they're also quite limitus. Is that a word? No, that's not a word, but the opposite of limit.
And if anybody watching has had any sort of experience with this too, throw it up in the chat. Let's interact here. If you have any questions, throw them in there.
Yeah, love hearing those horror stories. But yeah, so those are the two approaches. So depending on what kind of migration you're going for, do you want to re-IP or do you want to stretch your networks? That typically defines, do you want to do a networking-based migration or do you want an application-based migration? This dashboard here is built for a application-based migration, but we can do the exact same thing for a network. The searches and the scopes are just a little bit different. So we've got a lot of data here. We've got a lot of data, and I'm gonna explain a little bit of why we need this, and also know that this is not the only part or the only data that's available, but just the relevant data that's relevant to migrations. So I've focused on an application called MOAD, and maybe you would already know it because we use this one in demos quite heavily. But this application consists of 3 tiers. You've got a load gen tier, you've got a database, and you got a web tier. So these are talking and connecting to each other. Just the quick FYI, by the way, I restarted this demo app, the MOAD app, just a couple of hours ago. So the traffic is pretty much 0. But just imagine if we're talking about terabytes and gigabits of traffic here. So the couple of metrics that we need in order to determine what. First off, can the destination for the migration support this network traffic? That's pretty important because if you migrate it and it turns out that you cannot support it, that it's too heavy, that there's too much internet traffic or too much end user traffic that goes through your own data center, you're going to have issues. Unfortunately, I've had to help a couple of customers to reverse a migration after they realized that the network was just not suited for these applications. So we've got these couple metrics here: the total traffic, north-south compared to east-west. So east-west and north-south, and north-south is interesting because that's internet traffic. East-west traffic is interesting because that's end-user traffic. So those are your coworkers at the other end of the SD-WAN, for example. So this would go over the data center interconnect typically. So you need to be able to size that, the data center interconnect. And the north-south would go into the internet. And well, if you're migrating to any type of public cloud, you're going to pay for that north-south traffic. So you need to know that in advance as well.
Yeah, so there's some important information here. Then, I mean, as far as scoping out, do we want to just move some of these virtual machines or do we want to migrate everything to help with that ingress-egress traffic? But also the point that you made earlier on is that you can also see where that traffic's coming from, right? So if we are looking at data centers, in various geographic regions, that can help us to identify where we maybe want to land this too, right?
Yeah, and just to get to your point, I've also got a per country list in here.
Look at that.
Because we started the app today, that's not going to fly, so I pulled up this one. Just a real quick diversion.
Versatile.
Yeah. So this is the list of countries that are sending traffic to this VRNI instance. We can limit this down to the application and then get the actual numbers that would fill out that table if I had any internet traffic for that MOAD app. But yeah, I mean, for this case, it would kind of be a clear decision. All right, yeah, I have to put this in the US. UK is a close second, but if
maybe on the East Coast of the US.
We could even go down that road. Yeah, we could do it per region if you'd like, or if you want to go higher per continent. But yeah, this is a good way to determine, like, do I need to put it in the US or do I need to put it closer to my end users and make them more happy because it's quicker and doesn't have to go over the Atlantic, for example. Right. So yeah, just showing that because this one is empty because yeah. Yeah, so we just finishing off those metrics, because when you're planning out these network requirements, if you're looking at the data center interconnect or the actual network design that you want to do in your destination site, whether that be something like VMware Cloud and AWS or the public cloud or even another data center, that could also be applicable, right? The maximum rate of traffic and the average rate of traffic can be very different. Like in this case, it's multiple. The maximum is a multiple of the average, but the maximum is the thing that we need to support. If we don't have the maximum available, then you're going to get packet loss and all kinds of headaches when you do it. So that's like the benchmark. If this goes over your direct connect or whatever VPN you're connecting to towards the destination, then you're going to be in trouble. So yeah.
This doesn't look too bad. This looks like my DSL connection could probably handle this application.
Yeah, it's actually hosted in your home lab as well.
Yeah, that's not your actual traffic. That's just what's being limited by my connection.
Yeah, that's the maximum that we can do.
Do you have like any recommendations on things people look at if they do want to clean things up so it's a little bit less load when they move it?
Yeah, if it goes over that maximum, then you can go in and not let my browser work, I see. Okay. Typically, if I click this, I would get an overview of something like this. And just let me just look for flow. You would get an overview of the actual flows going over that specific category that you're looking at. So if this were to work in my browser, I don't know why it's not working, but yeah, this would be the maximum rate of the flows from this application. So you would get an overview of this specific application, and you could do all kinds of things here. I mean, you can look for destination VMs and source VMs. You can group by these. So you can see the VMs, the workloads that are actually doing this traffic. For example, if I look at this flow, this is a pretty heavy flow. I mean, this is more than 10 gigabit consistently. If the top talker of this application, if that's something like this, then I would go in and look at this specific VM. And I can open up the dashboard of that VM to get a closer look of what that VM is actually doing. But I would go down to the top talkers, see what it's actually doing, and then maybe strip some of those components off. I mean, if it can be, right? I mean, if it's just a part of the application and the application is not gonna work if you remove it, then you've got a different problem. But it's just looking at the data and drilling down into the actual usage and then looking closer at, for example, that VM.
I was thinking, I deal in logs, so sometimes people won't notice that they have like left logging at verbose when they're troubleshooting something, which can overwhelm things. I'm sure there's other aspects where, this would quickly point out the VM, and then you can go adjust the settings so that you can bring that down and make it so that it is within the limits, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of where you reach the threshold between vRealize operation and vRealize network insight. Like if you saw the demo of John last week or 2 weeks ago, then you saw that they have, or VROPS has application aware inside VROPS, like context.
Yeah.
VRNI only pretty much goes to the actual workload and then the protocol, the network protocol that's being used. And the reason why is because vRealize is agentless, so we don't have anything running inside the VM that can actually tell us, like, you've got this service running that is using this much traffic, and maybe it's a redundant server or like a configuration optimization, like you're talking about. So that's like another step. If when you identified the top talkers, and you do want to get a closer look on the application settings or whatever it is, then you can turn to VROPS or inside the VM itself.
But that's not to say VRNI can't get you insight into what ports that traffic's being sent over.
No,
right?
No. It's all the network traffic that comes from that VM on a protocol on a port level. So in this case, you can see the source, destination, and the port, and vRNI enhances that by looking at all the context around it. So we know what the source VM is, we know what the source IP, destination, the destination VM, and then there's a bunch of classification happening as well, like what kind of traffic is it, east-west, a bunch of flow types, like it's not a shared service. It's not a shared service. We can detect that because it's not DNS or not NTP or whatever. It's a VM to VM flow. All of this context is added on the actual, just the information on source, destination, port number. And the lowest we go is onto the actual protocol. So we can see that this is port 8080. And there's no layer 7 information on this part. We have the applied firewall rules and all that. We just don't have the actual process, the exe, the executable that is generating this traffic.
Yeah, I think having all the port data and the flow information is hugely helpful. I mean, that gives you an idea right away.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the port number, and you could just grab that number and either go into the VM and look at the open ports. You can see what's sending on that port number. Same goes for in VROPS, right? I mean, you can go to the application list in VROPS and then determine, okay, so this executable is actually running this. As far as I know, but yeah, this we
right,
can look at the network.
Yep.
No. I try to pretend that I know something about vRealize, but anyway, so once you've done this benchmark, so we can actually migrate this traffic, maybe not to your internet, Matt, but we can definitely migrate this to VMC. Then we want to make a couple of decisions. Do we want to secure the application right away, or is it already secured? Maybe there are already NSX in place in the source, and we just copy over those firewall rules, or do we need to secure it before it goes to the actual migration? And that's where the micro-segmentation planner comes in. So if I look at this part, I can maybe just focus on VM. By the way, that scoping that we talked about with the micro-segmentation planner, this is that. So I can group by VLAN, application, subnet, folder, VM, even the port number to go really micro-segment, I guess. But if you look at traditional micro-segmentation, you look at the VM. So let's look at the VM traffic here. So we've got this MySQL database, and if I click on that, I can look at the external services that this VM is using. I can look at the evidence that we have for that. I can see the flows. So this is scoped on the VM that I'm currently on, and then going outside to another application. But more interestingly, I've got the recommended firewall rules. So based on the traffic, based on the flows that vRealize is seeing, it's recommending these firewall rules to be applied for this VM. And again, spare the lack of data here. Just imagine that there's also MySQL and maybe HTTP and SSH and all that. If the data was actually there for this.
Now, if you had, I was just gonna, do you have any recommendations on how long people need to run it to get a good recommendation?
Yeah, so a couple of hours is not enough, as you can see. Typically, what you would look at is like this application. In this case, we know that it's a web shop, so it's accessed continuously. There's no quarterly or monthly or weekly jobs that needs to be run. But if you look at like financial systems or a CRM system or CMS, those type of things, they have weekly tasks typically. So let it run and gather data as long as you think you've got your scheduled tasks in there. And that's a very convoluted sentence, but basically you would have some idea of like, okay, so we're doing salaries every month. We're doing our TPS reports every quarter. We're running these processes. So we know that once a quarter this happens. So leave it running for at least 3 months, for at least 1 quarter. But I mean, as soon as you get it, it'll start forming this data. And if there's no data yet, then it'll not show it yet, like this one. So yeah, at least a month, but depending on what kind of applications you're looking at, longer than a month, if possible. So once this is filled out, I could either say, oh, I don't need this boot BS. There's no DHCP going on in the destination site. And then I can export these rules as CSV. Excuse me. And that's kind of cool because we have an import tool that can import the output of this export into VMware Cloud and AWS, NSXT, and a couple of other firewalls. So you could get the like the manual copying and pasting from this overview to your firewall out of the way by doing that automatically, which is kind of neat.
That is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anything to take the human out of human error.
Yeah,
especially with firewall rules.
Yeah, and it goes for every single level, right? So if I just want to do it on a per tier basis, you would export the web tier firewall rules in the database tier, and then it would convert the tier into the VMs and then apply those firewall rules to those VMs. But yeah, you definitely want to have some security in place if you don't already have it, if you are migrating to something like a public cloud, like VMware Cloud and AWS. So that's where the security planner comes in. Let me check. It's just a topology. So how much time you got? I know I've been talking for a while.
Well, we have as much time as you like. I mean, I guess the last thing that, we should really touch on, you'd mentioned being able to monitor your applications as they're getting migrated.
Yeah.
How do we do that? How do we make sure that everything is going to come back once it lands?
So I've been lazy again. I've got this pinboard again. Instead of just showing you through the UI, I've just got this one page where I can show everything. But there's a couple things that you need to keep an eye out for. Let's say you are doing a migration using VMware HCX, and also, God forbid, extending layer 2 networks. If only for a while, I mean, just for a week or so, that's fine. But so you need to monitor HCX in that case, because that's actually inside the data path of the network. You need to monitor the data center interconnect. You need to monitor the traffic that goes into the VMware Cloud and VMware Cloud and AWS SDDC, just to make sure that you're not going over any maximums, maximum traffic amounts or something like that. So vRealize integrates with ACX for one to get visibility into the L2 extensions. So that's good. It has a pretty good overview of the latency between data centers. So let me just show you. This is the average latency between our VMC environment and our on-prem data centers. So a couple of connections here, and you can see a lovely spike that's more than 10 times or a little bit less than 10 times than regularly. So there's something going on there. Let's check if that's also in another data center. That's awesome. So this is very good data to correlate with each other, right? I mean, we've got two data centers connected to VMC, the same VMC SDDC, and they're both spiking at the same point, at the same time. So good morning. So now I can either go into the direct connect or the VPN tunnel, the endpoint that is actually supporting this traffic, and see what happens at 9:10. That's in my morning. Okay. Oh wait, that's probably the backup, I think. Yeah.
That would make sense.
Yeah, so you want to keep an eye on that. I personally do not have a threshold set up in this environment to give me an alert, because I would be kind of getting notifications every second. But typically you would put out an alert whenever this happens and set a threshold on maybe 20 milliseconds, and anything above 20 milliseconds you would get an alert, so you can go in and have a look at what's happening. But also let's have a look at the network rates of those L2 extension appliances from ACX, where the data center interconnect traffic is actually going over. So we've got this one, which is a steady stream. This is not too bad. This is the MOAT demo that I started this morning. Also not too bad. And again, these values will have thresholds. So these appliances, they can do a maximum limit of, I think it's like 4 gigabits per second of traffic. And we're getting nowhere near that, but vRealize would alert you whenever the traffic comes close to that 4 gigabit, so you can catch it before it happens. And then, just as a network admin, I'm kind of curious on how the migration is going. So I'm not the one that's doing it, right? I'm just taking care of the network. But I still want to see what applications need to be migrated, which VMs are already migrated, and which need to be migrated. So because vRealize has that application context added to those VMs, but also knows where these workloads are hosted, you can say, all right, so this is on the destination side, this is on the source side, so this is your to-do list, and this has already been done. Just to satisfy my own curiosity. Whenever you see ACX going bananas, like if there's too much traffic going over it, we can deep dive into the individual flows that go over the layer 2 extensions. So you would use this to troubleshoot. Like for example, why is John Diaz's front end talking over 70 megs to John Diaz's database server? It seems like a lot for a database server. So you could drill down. And this one is an example what happens when you put those thresholds in place. It's kind of sucky that there's no breach of the threshold, but I've got a threshold here at 50 megs, which would be maybe like 3 gigabits if you are looking at the actual maximum conversions that ACX can support. But now we can just have a look at all the ACX appliances in one single graph, and then also see which ones are doing the most work, and which ones will go over that threshold, and then give me an alert whenever that happens. Just to monitor the behavior of the traffic that goes through ACX, basically. And then lastly, not entirely lastly, the direct connect interface. So if you're not using, I'm waiting.
I was gonna say, but wait, there's more.
Oh, but wait, there's more. Yeah, there's one more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just added this one, so I kind of forgot. So if you're connecting to VMC via Direct Connect, you can see the Direct Connect interfaces right here. I could have a look why this one has a problem, and that's a pretty major problem. The BGP status. Like as a network admin, I know what this is. Like this makes sure that I actually have some connectivity to VMC. But I also know that I've got 2 of these. So my network is not impacted right now, but I should have a look at these this status. So that's one, and then then lastly, if I'm troubleshooting something between 2 VMs that might be on-prem and inside VMC, like maybe we've migrated half an application, like this imaging application where we've got the database and the application layer on 2 sites. Got the app right here and the database here. I can trace the network path between the on-prem and the VMC environment. So I can look at the data center, the direct connect, the physical components that support it, the co-located routers, then NSX with the edge and the distributed router. But also zoom in, like what kind of firewall rules are applicable. That's a perfect example of an unsecured environment. So the default allow any.
Don't capture those IPs, people.
No. But you can click on any of these and get the routing table, the interfaces, what kind of router is it, Cisco Nexus thing. So if you're doing some troubleshooting on these connections, then you can just plot out the entire VM path and look where the problems are. I don't have any problems here.
That's really cool. Well, awesome. So, I mean, I think you've shown us an awful lot of what vRealize Network Insight can do as far as not only scoping out your application, possibly even scoping out, or even segmenting an application if you've got multiple components, how much traffic is flowing between, in your case, you had video and storage, I think. You had a lot of traffic flowing there. So, that can kind of help with scoping what do you want to move, but then also where do you want to move it, right? You've kind of shown us the location-based, where all that traffic's coming from and everything. I've learned that Stretch Layer 2 is an awesome thing to use permanently.
Dude,
did I get that right?
We need to talk later.
I don't want to re-IP my, my license keys are based on. What's that, Julie?
Many years ago, I was involved in a migration, and we had to re-IP, and it was great because we could clean things up. But if VRNI was around back then, it would have made life much easier because it took 18 months, and everything was clean and pristine. But it was a lot of manual, doing network monitoring and not knowing which apps were talking to each other. And of course, every migration had to be small because you knew there would be issues with the applications because something's always going to break. Those quarterly processes, some instances things aren't noticed for a year, but it's clean. And so I really like the idea of re-IPing, but I know people hate it, but it's
right.
This would help a lot. I mean, then you wouldn't have to deal with the stretching layer too, right?
Yeah, and I should ease back a little bit because ACX does make it kind of fault tolerant. So it's not that dangerous anymore than I used to do it. Kind of makes me feel old, but I mean it's as long as you don't keep it up permanently, that's one thing.
Yep. So very cool. Well, Martijn, thanks so much for taking us through all this. If people want to reach out to you, how can they find you? Are you on the Twitter?
I'm on the Twitter. It's easier if you put that down there.
Yep.
Because the times that I get my name spelled correctly is not that much. But yeah, active on Twitter.
It's Martin.
Extra
Right?
consonant in there. Yep. Yeah. And Julie, how about yourself?
I am on the Twitter. I am __VRO.
Sorry, don't let that second underscore fool you, anybody. Julie Roman is out there, and I'm available at VMspot on Twitter. So thanks everybody for joining today. I mean, this session went long, but that's because it was so darn interesting. Taking a look at vRealize Network Insight. So if you have any other questions, anything like that, feel free to follow us. Reach out to VMware Cloud Management as well at VMware Cloud Management on Twitter. And I just want to thank you, Martijn and Julie, for jumping in to give us something cool to show here on episode 2 to vRealize this live.
Yeah, and I learned something. So this is awesome.
Sorry, I talked so much.
It's okay. So yeah, I mean, we are getting some good comments here. So Jack's saying he's in the middle of a huge re-IP, wishes he could use this. I mean, there's a trial, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not impossible.
30 days for SaaS, and I think like 60 or 90 days for on-prem. So knock yourself out. Yeah.
Fantastic. And another comment here from Dan Kerr. Dan, this is another great show, really excellent information. So really appreciate that feedback too. If this format works out for all of you, the whole point is to make people like Martijn and everybody available. So, feel free to type in your comments, questions, anything like that. But I guess with that, we can kind of take it home here, and we'll let Martijn wrap up his day. So thanks so much for staying late with us.
It's daylight savings, right? So it's not that late. But thank you for having me.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. We'll wrap this up. Cheers.